Is that what you're going to talk about on gear chasing today?
Yeah, I just don't want to say the name of it though, because I don't want to wind up in some internet meme. You know how the internet is. Take everything like that and take it out of context. Don't do that. Another thing that I like is fat wood. Fat wood, it'll keep going for a long time too. Basically, you can bust that open and you find fat wood. Hey guys, welcome to Gear Tasting. Today I wanted to start off talking about a couple of questions we've got on some new products released. Just real quickly, I wanted to go over some Israeli bandage stuff that we are now carrying individually in the ITS store. So many of you guys are familiar with the Israeli bandage. This is the 4-inch Israeli. We've had this in our trauma kits for years now. Back when we first started building trauma kits in 2010, we went with these because they're very proven in battle, and they also have great elastic properties for the bandage itself. They work tremendously. Huge fan of the Israeli bandage, and that's why we carry them. So we've been asked for years to do individual sales of the components that are in our trauma kits, and we've done that for the most part with a lot of the products that are in there. We just released those last week. So definitely check those out if you're interested in some individual products that I'll be going over real quick. But the big question was like, okay, hey, we got the 4-inch Israeli. What are the differences between the 4-inch as well as the 8-inch that you're carrying, and also the wound stop bandage? So not only are we carrying the 4-inch Israeli like this, and if you've heard me talk about the Israeli before, it's like Pepperidge Farms bread. So when you open the Israeli, it's still not open. There's an interior sealed component to the bandage as well before you get into it. So when we pack them in the kits, we remove this outer bandage. I'll go ahead and do that and show you. So we remove this outer package and have it like this, so that when you get it, you only have to open one package before you're actually to the bandage, which saves time, keep blood in the body. That's the whole goal of trauma medicine and things like that, so that's why we do that. So when you get to the 8-inch Israeli as well, that is a larger bandage. That's an abdominal bandage, so it's like a huge Israeli. What I like about the new Israelis that they're doing too is they also have this piece of thread that you can see that's sewn in. So as you unroll the bandage, you kind of break that thread, which what it prevents is that if you drop this, it doesn't all unravel on the ground. So the 4-inch has that as well. This one's already been undone because we've used this as a sample for other things, but the 4-inch also features that as well. So huge bandage. Obviously you can see the large area here. It's for large abdominal wounds and things like that to cover it. So this is a big 8-inch Israeli. But then we've also got a smaller bandage called a wound stop. So the wound stop is, I like to say, it's kind of a micro Israeli. So it's still got the locking bar. So the way that Israeli works is that as you put it on, you route this through this locking bar and then you roll it over itself, so it helps add pressure to the bandage. I won't go through the whole application of this, but then once you finish wrapping it around, you lock it off with this locking bar. So this small wound stop bandage still features that little locking bar, but it doesn't have the pressure cleat that's on here. So that cleat, when you route it through, it actually helps add pressure to the bandage on the Israeli, on the 4-inch. So, like I said, as this wraps around, you pass it through this and then back over itself like so, and as you crank it down, it's adding pressure with that bar to the actual wound, so hence pressure dressing. So this is a little bit similar. It's got an abdominal, or sorry, not abdominal, it's got a pad on it too that goes over the wound, and then as you wrap it around and add pressure to the wound, you can lock it off at the end with that little locking bar cleat type device. So that is the wound stop bandage. So like I said, a little smaller. If you compare these side by side, the Israeli, the 4-inch Israeli, the traditional Israeli is much longer. The elastic is a lot different on it too. Obviously a bigger pad to soak up more blood and things like that. But just laying this out, it's probably a good 1.5 times longer than the wound stop bandage. So I like it though because it's a small form factor. Rolled up. This one's not quite sealed. They come sealed when you open them, but we've been using these for demos. But folded up, it's pretty small in terms of a a pressure dressing bandage. So obviously you've got a lot more versatility with the 4-inch, but that is the wound stop bandage as well. So moving on, some of the other things we're offering individually now are the Halo vent seals. So if you're familiar with the Halo seals that we've had forever in our ETA Trauma Kits, we've now got the Halo vent included in all of our trauma kits. We recently moved to that. I'd say a good 6-8 months ago, maybe even a year ago, we moved to those. But now instead of having 2 regular seals like this, it's now got a vented seal too. So 1 regular seal, 1 vented for sucking chest wounds and things like that. So we're now carrying those. So the thing about Halos, which is really nice too, is it's almost like a mousetrap type stickiness level to it. So very good for occlusion during a sucking chest wound. Then we've got MPAs, which stands for a nasal pharyngeal airway. We've gotten this request for years to sell individual MPAs because these are pretty much top of the line Ruche MPAs. They're 28 French MPAs, which is kind of a common size for the nasal cavity. But it's got an adjustable flange on here, so meaning it can accommodate any kind of any size nasal cavity with the adjustable flange. Most of them don't have adjustable flanges on them, so that makes this definitely a more versatile NPA, and that's why we include them. They're a lot more money. They're more expensive than traditional MPAs that you can get that are 28 French, but these are much better quality. The rubber is much better on them too. They're made with it's a natural rubber latex, so that's something to keep in mind too. But anyway, 28 French adjustable flange, we're selling that. And then we're selling combat gauze individually as well. Most of you guys are familiar with combat gauze. We've had this in our kits for years too. This is the combat gauze with the X-ray strip that's in it. And if you guys aren't familiar with combat gauze, it's impregnated with kaolin, and that's the hemostatic agent that's inside combat gauze. So we are now selling that individually too. So even though it doesn't look like it, all this is actually inside this package. So they do a pretty good job vacuum sealing that. So then the last product we have is a Blizzard survival blanket. We're carrying these now. It's a very compact survival blanket when you look at what it actually is when you get it out. So it's a pretty large survival blanket. What I like about these two is that they're made to, obviously first and foremost, it's made to prevent hypothermia. So it's made to wrap around somebody. It's actually got a sticky seal right here, so you can peel off the tape right there. It opens up an adhesive strip, and you can wrap it around on the other side and actually stick this together around a person or around a casualty. So you can see it's plenty big to go around somebody if you had to use that. In that kind of situation, then I also like just having a survival blanket around for emergency purposes too. So if I had to build a shelter, I would construct one with something like this too. We have been testing these for a while before we started selling them, and this material, this Reflexite, or Reflexcell is what they call it, it's very durable too. So it's a good quality blanket for something like a survival situation too, if you had to build a shelter out of it too. So definitely check those out and all the other products that we're now selling individually like this on the ITS store, store.itstactical.com. Hey guys, the next thing I want to talk about is a new bolt carrier group that I got in from Sharps Rifle Company. This is their XPB Bolt Carrier Group, so it stands for Extreme Performance Bolt Carrier Group. And this is a bolt carrier that features a DLC, so it's a diamond-like coating, which doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to use lube, but it reduces the need to have lubrication on it because of the surface that's on it. So I don't know if it's really easy to see the surface and how it's coated, but this is the standard Bravo Company bolt carrier group that I have used extensively in this gun here that I took it out of. So as you can see, the finish is a little glossier on it, but there's not a whole lot of difference in terms of the color, but you can definitely tell it's coated with something. So again, that's the DLC coating. Some things that I look at when I'm looking at bolt carrier groups kind of for evaluation and performance and things like that, I definitely look at the staking of the carrier key at the top. That's huge for me, and it looks like Sharps has done a really good job on the staking as well on top of that carrier. So just in comparison with Bravo Company, who's notorious for properly staking a gas key at the top, it looks very good when compared to the Bravo Company And I always use Bravo Company as kind of like the de facto standard in the industry, and that's just because I've trusted their products for so long now, and they were one of the first companies out there. Paul at Bravo Company was really vocal about wanting to make components the right way. So what I mean by the right way is making sure everything is magnetical particle inspected. It's called MPI and HP. It's on bolts that they make, which I've got here. High pressure magnetic particle testing. So that's something that all of their products go through. And I would have to research this a little more with Sharps to find out what they do for their testing procedures. But so far, it looks like a very quality bolt carrier group. I haven't had the chance to use it yet, but I am going to take a look at everything with it. So one thing I kind of notice off the bat too is that it's got these cuts here in the backside of the bolt carrier group. And I would assume those are kind of for lightning. I did weigh the two, which again, Bravo Company being the standard. This is 11.1 ounces, but I don't know if that weight is a little skewed because this bolt carrier group is really dirty. It's the one that I have never cleaned in a long time, put it that way. So I'm sure I've got a couple ounces of gunk or a couple of tenths of an ounce of gunk or something like that in there. But again, this is 10.7 ounces, Bravo Company's 11.1. So there's a little bit of weight difference there, but again, I can't not attribute that to some of the gunk that's in there. So another thing I look at is, another thing that's evident here is the bolt has these kind of 45-degree angle cuts on it as it's getting inserted into the chamber there. So this is kind of a normal bolt pattern here. You can kind of see those are, nice 90-degree angles on there, but these are kind of cut to 45. I don't know if that's to ease the transition into the star chamber or not, but those are, kind of 45-degree angle cuts on the bolt itself. And then when I took this apart, pull the firing pin out. One thing I noticed as I was taking this apart, first of all, let me put this back together real quick. What I look for too when I'm looking at bolts is the gas rings. And this is a good test you can do at home too to find out if your gas rings are good or need to be replaced, which, new bolt carriers I would never suspect would have this problem of needing gas rings replaced or anything, but it's always good to check this. You can stand the bolt on end like that, and if it presses down like that, you need to think about replacing your gas rings because they're getting worn out. So that's kind of the gas ring stand test. So if I did that on my Bravo Company, it stands too, so the gas rings are good to go in there too. But that's something I look for when I'm looking at bolts too, just to kind of give you an idea. I'm sure many of you guys do that at home, but just wanted to mention it. All right, so when I remove the cam pin, pop the bolt out. Again, looking at gas rings, there is no right or wrong way to put gas rings into. There's, some people say that you need to line up the gas rings. Some people say you don't need to line up the gas rings. I've never really even paid much attention to that at all. So then if I pop the extractor out here, one thing I noticed on the extractor is the spring does have a good bite to it. That's one thing I always check for too, is that the spring on the extractor has a little like cat tooth type feel to it, so you can feel a grab there on that. But they have the little donut ring, the little O-ring that's on here on the actual extractor itself, which I kind of question that just a little bit because in my opinion, I feel like that donut ring is not necessary unless there's a problem with extraction. So if the extractor spring and the insert is not. So I do notice that there's no insert in this, so maybe that's why they decided to put the donut on here. I just noticed that. But so I guess if there's not an insert, you do need something, so maybe that's why they chose to do the donut O-ring as well. So, but anyway, just to give you an idea of what that looked like in there, put that back together. So as far as cycling goes and everything like that, I did put this bolt carrier group in my gun, and everything was working just fine. I'll do that here in just a second. So get this back in. And I like to make sure when I'm putting that pin back in too that it's nice and flush and not sticking out on one of the sides. Just a little tip there. So we'll assemble this again here. Again, I want to make sure the right side goes in. Put the cam pin together, firing pin back in, and Bolt Carrier Group reassembled. And put this in the gun here. So one thing I noticed, you know, as I was kind of messing with the gun cycling, is that everything locks up really well, but I did notice that when you compare it to the Bravo Company bolt, you can see there's not the half moon cuts for the assist, the forward assist, which I'm not a huge forward assist person anyway. I've probably only had to use that in the whole time I'm shooting. I was shooting maybe twice. Like, it's really just never been something that I feel is necessary in a gun anyway, and that's maybe why Sharps did this. But if you notice where their cuts are, they kind of stop the cuts back here, and that was something that I noticed. So if the bolt's stuck back, you know, in this kind of position here, there's no grab for the forward assist until you get to about right there is where it starts grabbing. Versus the Bravo Company grabs a lot further back. So that's just something I wanted to bring up if that's important to you on your gun. I did want to point that out. So again, XPB from Sharps, and that's their SRC bolt carrier. So in comparison, just real quick, you can see those half moon cuts, and it looks like they even start a little further this way too. They do have the cuts, which is important if you want to use a forward assist, but just in comparison, there's the difference between the cuts on there. So anyway, that is from Sharps Rifle Company, and I appreciate them letting us take a look at it. Welcome to Questions Over Coffee. Today I'm answering a question first, but first I would like to point out that Matt made us these really nice, cool gear tasting cards, which is very official. So now we will have gear tasting cards for Questions Over Coffee. So what's a good fire starter? Patrick P. asked from Twitter for all weather conditions. First of all, the best fire starter is the one you have on you, obviously. So whether that be matches or a lighter, I typically carry a little mini Bic in my pocket. And it's not because I smoke, it's because I always like having a lighter on me for purposes like that. Even when the fluid's out in these, you can still use them for a pretty significant spark, which is great for things like tinder quick tabs. We have a product called the brass fire starter, and that throws kind of you can see kind of spark from the lighter here versus this. It's kind of AKA the Chonga sparker. So tinder quick tabs are nice to carry too if you have the room to carry them. They're pretty small, and they're pretty lightweight too, so you can carry them in a lot of different places without necessarily carrying a full-on survival kit, which these are in our mini survival kit too, and 2 of them come with each of our brass fire starters as well. But what makes them so great is that you can kind of spread them apart like this and break them up, and hopefully I don't burn down the building. But yeah, super easy to light with a spark. They're great fire starters. They last for a long time too, and you can get your fire started around these, so they're perfect for that too. Another thing that I like is fat wood. Basically, it's resin that's, or it's a stump from a tree that's been impregnated with resin, basically. So as a pine tree dies, the resin kind of falls down to the root of the tree, and then basically you can bust that open and you find fat wood. So if you look at how well this burns too, when a fire is applied to it, you've almost got kind of a candle effect that's built into fat wood. It'll keep going for a long time too. And it's fairly resistant to things like wind and items like that. So it's a great fire starter as well. The thing to do with fat wood though is not to have it in big pieces like this necessarily right away. It's better to take larger pieces and basically get them down into shavings like this. And with fat wood shavings, hopefully again I don't burn down the building, but with fat wood shavings you can you can throw a spark into fat wood shavings and they'll they'll light up as well. So those are some of my favorite fire starters: Tinder Quick tabs, pieces of fat wood. Those are probably the best things around right now for that. That's in my opinion, but that's why we carry them in the ITS store too. You know, Tinder Quick tabs, and then we carry these tins. These are from Exotac. It's either the Tinder tin or the fat wood splinters or fat wood shavings. Really is the difference. They're both called Tinder tins. So I like those a lot. I like these too because they're very compact. You can throw them in a bag or anything like that. And the tins are fairly waterproof. They obviously don't have a gasket on them, but it's a good way to keep your shavings dry too, because that's important with any kind of fire starter, whether it be, you know, a Sparker or Tinder Quicks like this. Dry is the answer for stuff like that. But you know, you can throw a lighter, accidentally leave a lighter in your pocket and wash it in the washing machine, and it will still work too, which is a great benefit of like little mini Bics like this too. So hopefully that answers your question, and I'm glad I didn't burn down everything. Got some fat wood in my coffee cup. All right, next question comes from Jonathan K on Facebook. Bryan, you've mentioned in the podcast and previous videos that you carry a notebook with you at all time. What kind of notes are you taking, and what advice do you have for someone that's looking to do that while he travels? I would recommend carrying one in your back pocket like I do. I always have a notebook with me, and the kind of notes that I take really vary. They are everything from kind of a daily task list to things that I like to make notes of in a hurry when I'm out and about. Occasionally I use the Notes app in my iPhone too, but the problem with that is that I then kind of have to transfer that, but that's what happens with physical notes as well. What I usually do is, as I get through a day's notes, and I either complete everything on a task list or I transfer them onto my productivity software, whether that's Evernote or OmniFocus or anything like that. I usually draw a slash through the page. I've even done stuff in the past too where I fold pages. So I'll do the cross fold. Many military guys are kind of familiar with this as well. So you'll kind of cross fold pages. And I know I'm totally messing up a notebook that I haven't even had anything done to yet, but so this is a way of marking that your pages are filled to. You can kind of fold them like that so you know where your active pages are in a notebook. That's a method as well. I thought I'd show that. I've never really demonstrated that on there before, but I was just thinking about it. So every other page is cross-folded, and then you have, well, I kind of did that backwards because this one should be the other way. So it's opposite each way. Let me redo that here. This really should have been opposite. So every other page is folded one way or the other, so you basically have what looks like that in the end on your notebook. So that's a way of marking pages for completion too, which I like to do. I like to know that the notes aren't necessary anymore, because what used to happen is before I marked pages with either a slash line or folded them like this, I would try to go back to notes, and I'd have to look through a bunch of pages to kind of figure out where I'm at. So that works really well for me too, especially in notebooks like this versus kind of a traditional reporter style notebook where it's flipping up. If it's a flip up, I typically like to I still fold, but I like the slash method better with just a pen line through the page when I've transferred everything. But again, to answer your question, it's really just anything that kind of jumps into my mind too. Sometimes ideas for products stick out to me, and I want to actually sketch something out, which is why notebooks are great too for that purpose as well. So hopefully that answers your question. I think I was also asked, and I don't know if I've answered this, so forgive me, but I feel like I was also asked what I do with my notebooks after I get through them or complete them. I usually just put them in one of my desk drawers, so I have kind of a running index of notebooks. I don't necessarily mark them with a date or anything, but I do try to add dates of a period in the notebooks in the front somewhere. So I'll have a start date and an end date basically in the notebook if I ever have to go back and reference notes from there. But I'm pretty good about transferring and making sure I transfer anything that's important to me anyway. So honestly, I've never really had to go back much in notebooks since I started transferring everything. There was a time where I was using notebooks and I would write in them, and I might transfer stuff, I might not, but now I'm really in the habit of making sure that at the end of the day, everything that I've been writing in the notebook for that day, if it's important, gets transferred into the right place. So hope that answers your question. All right, guys, thanks for watching Gear Tasting. Remember, if you have questions, use the # Gear Tasting on any social media network. There's our cool cards again, and we'll get them answered here on Gear Tasting. If you like what we're doing, please consider joining our crew leader membership. That's linked below. And again, some of the things that we've shown in Gear Tasting today can be found in the ITS store. We'll have a link to that below too if you want to check it out and help support what we do here on the show. I don't know what that is. Thanks for watching.